Well, it was the debate we were all waiting for, and really what the audience wanted to see today was if the 81-year-old President Joe Biden could get through it without making enormous mistakes, which is unfortunately what we've been used to seeing over the last 4 years. Well, despite being in hiding for a week at Camp David with an empty schedule so his staff could prepare him for going up against Donald Trump, the moment Joe Biden entered the stage, he shuffled his way to the microphone and he looked like he was in desperate need of assistance. Now, after just 10 minutes on stage, it appeared as though he was falling asleep at the podium. His eyes were shut for a few moments as if he was going into a micro sleep before suddenly he opened up his eyes and he was back with us again. And he continued to do that throughout the first half of that debate. But that was just the beginning. When Joe Biden started speaking, well, that's when we really got into dangerous territory. He was referencing tax laws and he claimed America has 1,000 trillionaires.
What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America.
Look, I'm not sure if that's the case, Joe Biden, but look, sounds great. And then when he was trying to make more points, it was just more rambling, waffle, and a lot of losing his train of thought.
Eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Then, when he wanted to make his point about abortion, he just repeated the word period 3 times.
But we are not for late-term abortion, period, period, period.
Very strong, Joe Biden. Well done. Now, nearly every journalist and commentator that I caught up with in the lead up to this debate told me that they were expecting a stronger than usual Joe Biden to turn out today due to the amount of time he had to prepare and the amount of assistance that he was getting in the lead up to this debate. But he has failed to do that today. If it somehow wasn't clear before, it is crystal clear now. He is no longer cut out for the top job. Yesterday, I caught up with podcaster Brad Palumbo, who told me the rules of this debate were set up to favour Joe Biden, including a halftime break.
Well, we can expect a show, that's for sure. Donald Trump, if he's one thing, is an entertainer. And then Joe Biden has a lot to prove to the American public because a lot of people, including Democrats and independents, are really concerned about his ability to actually do the job of being president. We've seen him glitch and freeze and look confused. We've seen him call out to dead people or non-existent human beings on too many occasions to count during public events or ceremonies. And so he's got the most to prove here. All Trump needs to do, he's up in many polls. He's in a strong position. Trump just kind of needs to not mess anything up, not cause himself any problems, which, with him, he could always say something unexpected. But Biden's the one who I think will really be scrutinized intensely to see, is he up for it?
Apparently, Joe Biden's team have scheduled frequent breaks during his preparation for this debate. They're trying their best to keep him sharp for this debate against Donald Trump. And the 81-year-old president and his close team have moved to Camp David for intensive practice sessions, gearing up for the first of 2 crucial debates. How nervous would you be if you worked for Joe Biden right now?
Well, I would have absolutely refused to let him on the debate stage. I would have said, we're not doing it. Make whatever excuse you have to avoid it. But one thing I noticed is that they were able to negotiate something unusual, which is there's going to be 2 commercial breaks during this 90-minute debate. And that's unusual. Historically, in general election presidential debates in the U.S., there are no commercial breaks. You just run through for 90 minutes. You'd think the leader of the free world should be able to just speak and answer questions from a podium with a glass of water for an hour and a half. You'd think that'd be no big deal, but they were actually able to negotiate for 2 commercial breaks and other rules that seem very favorable to Biden. For example, the other person's mic will be turned off while the other is speaking, which stops Trump from getting his jabs in or undercutting or throwing Biden off, which is something Trump's very good at. We saw him famously do that to Hillary Clinton on multiple occasions in 2016. So this debate stage seems to have been skewed to be as favorable as possible to Biden with some unusual accommodations. But I would still be very worried that he's going to refer to himself as a senator, refer to himself as vice president, reference a dead colleague who died years ago as if he's just spoken to them or as if he's just seen them, confuse world leaders that he's recently engaged with for ones that have actually been out of office or dead for years. I'd be very concerned that he'd be going to do that on the debate stage, but I guess it feels like he has to because things aren't going well for him, I guess. He feels behind in a lot of the polls, or that he's got to try to make a case to the people to show them he's not too frail or too old to do the job. So the onus really is on Biden.
I would argue that he's really failing to make that case, though, when there is so much concern around his age and his mental health. The fact that there are breaks in this debate, I think, really doesn't help. It really feeds into the narrative that, no, he's not up to the job.
It definitely does, but only if you know that that's unusual. And I guess because in the presidential primary debates, so the Republican primary and the Democratic primary, they have presidential debates, and it's fairly normal for there to be commercial breaks during those ones. But it's just the general election televised debates where historically there haven't been commercial breaks. So he might be banking on the fact that a lot of people won't notice that. I mean, heck, we have commercial breaks mid American football games here.
Yeah.
So people are pretty used to commercials. So I think he's probably hoping that people don't notice that that's actually quite unusual.
Well, we are going to notice if there's another gaffe, which, look, I would put my money on that there probably will be. I don't know how long he can really last speaking until he stumbles and makes a mistake, but we will wait and see tomorrow. How crucial is this debate really when, of course, we know the two candidates so well, Donald Trump and Joe Biden? Is this a debate actually going to change the minds of voters?
Well, the impact of presidential debates is pretty limited, but it's definitely not zero. And the thing is, I think pretty much everyone agrees this is going to, especially with the electoral college system, it could be an incredibly close election. It could come down to just thousands of votes in a handful of swing states, like it famously did for Trump's 2016 victory. So in that kind of an environment where it's so razor thin, a moment from these debates where Biden looks confused or where he mixes up a name or refers to a dead person, which he just does all the time, that could actually hurt him. Whereas a couple months ago or a little while back, he gave a speech for the State of the Union where he was yelling a lot. There was a lot of bizarre substance to it, but he actually was, seemed to be present and alert for the whole thing. And it gave him a little bit of a boost because people were like, hey, okay, maybe he's not as far gone as I thought. If he could have a showing like that, obviously we have no idea, but if there's any way they could get him just for 90 minutes to lock in and seem fully present, maybe that could reassure people who are on the fence about voting for him. But honestly, if I were him, I'd be really concerned.
What are your thoughts on RFK Jr.? Should have he been allowed to join in?
Well, they notoriously make the rules very hard for a third-party candidate to get in because historically the people who've made the rules is a committee of Democrats and Republicans who can't agree on much, but can certainly agree that they don't want third-party candidates to be on that debate stage. And look, I disagree with RFK Jr. on many things. I agree with him on a few things. But I think having more voices and more perspectives is a good thing. So I would have liked to see him on the debate stage. I would have liked Americans to know that you don't only have two options this November. There's also going to be Libertarian Party candidates and Green Party candidates. So people do often forget about these options because in many ways, the U.S. electoral system is heavily, heavily skewed by the two mainstream parties. The only time they can work together is to keep third parties out, basically. It's the only time they can ever agree on anything. So they set a very high bar that RFK Jr. doesn't appear to have met. But honestly, he got surprisingly close, which tells you the fact that he got 15% in any polls is really quite something we haven't seen in a long time for a third-party candidate.
Yeah, that's true. It shows you that there are plenty of Americans out there that want change.